our group, and there ended up being like 5 of us that stayed at my 8 a.m. East Coast time. That half an hour was my slot, and we did it for about 3 years. And Peter was part of the group, so it's so nice to see you in person. Thank you for making the effort to make the drive in. So to the rest of you that are in the area, because there is, as I mentioned Friday night, there is something about being in person together that can lend more support. And because the topic today is there is another world, okay? Part of that world that I want to speak about, or that I want to practice with you about, involves how are we in person with beings? How are we doing in person? Because we just went through a world event that was not really helpful as far as interpersonal relationship, right? And it stressed everybody out tremendously, and a lot of people died. A lot of people died, and a lot of people are still suffering from long-term effects of that, mentally and physically, as we know, right? So whether you ended up with long COVID, or whether you just end up, there were people I know that were isolated, that aren't like me, who like to be isolated because it's like a retreat. Like my brother called me a few months into the quarantine. He lives near me. He's a wonderful guy. And he has a family, and he said, I'm really glad that you're comfortable living alone. And, because he had friends that also had single siblings that were isolated alone, and they were freaking out, and they were calling their sibling and going, you never call me, and I haven't talked to you, and I'm here by myself. And for me, it was like a retreat. So I was just like slotted right in. But then it was nice to teach online and to do these practices and to have this group that I always feel connected to now. And we're going to get going again when we start some other practices. I'm looking at a time when my schedule's a little more stable. And so how are we doing in person? And then what happens when we have chosen we're not going to be in person, or we are not going to, we don't want to be around other people? And how's that going for you? And what happens? And right now, one of the things I also wanted to talk about, and we'll get started formally in a moment, but is because I travel a fair amount to teach, the United States seem to be struggling a little bit more now. The whole world is struggling, but the thing is, we've struggled before, right? We forget division. If some of you lived through the 1960s and the late 60s and the Vietnam War in the States, and it was the first war that we really had on our TVs in our living rooms, I remember as a child watching that and not understanding what was happening, and hearing my parents' comments, and knowing some families that lost kids over there, and then there was all the protests going on, and that was a huge thing that we went through, a big uprising that happened in France, it happened in Europe. It wasn't just the United States, but the National Guard was marching on some of the campuses, rolling tanks into, for instance, the university I ended up going to, they had tanks rolling through the campus, if you can imagine, and students were shot in the United States on campuses. And so that was a time we forget now, it's so long ago, that that was a huge good one. David told me this morning, I'm going to keep taking photos until I get one of you with your eyes open looking at me. So I thought, so that to give him a break, I'll just do the photo op now, and then we can get that out of the way. So, yes, so we forget that time period. But I remember my parents saying, oh my God, the young kids these days, they have no respect, and they're all having sex with each other, and they're all smoking marijuana, and and that was a major thing. And there was a big generation gap, right? That, it's interesting. Now I hear people say, some of you I know are of this generation, oh, the millennials, they, ha, 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 and the millennials say, oh, these old guys, they don't know what they're, and like, it's so funny. So again, there are these ups and downs. Samsara. Samsara's nature, okay? It may seem really bleak to you now, but there's also, what happens is, because of our technology, namely our devices, our phones, we now have access to all these things going on more quickly. So before it was like you'd get a newspaper, and that news had already been like 6 to 8 hours old, and you get it, but you had a pace to look through it. It has a different feel when you read a newspaper, when you read a magazine. Your brain's engaging in a different way. Now everything's in this little box. And there we are, scrolling along, and so, and we're getting information too quickly, and then what happens is it causes a reactive response too quickly. So I don't have ability to digest. I like, when you read a newspaper, I know all the millennials are laughing at me now. Newspapers? They're like, what? But you'd read a newspaper while you're having your coffee. Remember those mornings? Right? I relish those kind of experiences. I don't have them anymore. I don't have newspapers, and I'm also on the road a lot, so I don't get a newspaper. But there's this passage of space and time. Now, some of you have probably set up where, no, I can still read, and I look at that, and it's different coming electronically. But there was this, you'd have your breakfast, and you'd have your space. So we'll talk about all that. I just want to get our motivation set up, and we're going to do a little exercise now to get that motivation in place and to begin, because I think everybody's here now. Great. Thank you. Just sit comfortably, and just make sure your spine's as extended as possible. You can lightly close your eyes. And as you adjust your position, if you need to, just begin to bring your awareness to your breath, a normal, natural breath. And see if you can breathe in through your nostrils. It's not a loud breath, but can you count to 5 to 6 seconds? Inhalation, slowly. Five to 6 seconds on the out-breath. Please reflect on your reason for being here right now. And it's great if you think you're going to get some information that may help you better balance your life right now. Wonderful. But what if you can expand beyond the boundaries of yourself? and think, if I get this information, can I put it into use on a regular, consistent basis? Can I, in a sense, fold it into my practice so it can wake up my practice in a bit, and that will help me move along a path to reach a place where I am fully empowered to benefit all living beings? That is the essence of this tradition of Buddhism. The real goal is to benefit all living beings. So the goal is not to get enlightened. The goal is to benefit all living beings, unlimitedly, perfectly. That's what a Buddha does. That's what the omniscient mind is capable of. So that's the means. The means is to become a Buddha, to become a highly realized being. Simply the means. So if you can include that higher purpose, bigger purpose, broader purpose to benefit all living beings, if you can include that in your motivation right now, feel free. Taking a moment to set that intention, and at the very least, putting your mind in the most positive space. And not only for our time together now, but all the events of the rest of your day. And here's one technique to start, one helpful meditation, helping us to think about the nature of our mind. Something helpful to keep us balanced, regardless of what is appearing in the world around you. So imagine right now you're seated on the banks of a beautiful, vast mountain lake. And you're gazing out over the expanse of this mountain lake, and the water is crystal clear. Can you merge your mind as best as you can with that expanse of the crystal clear lake that is like your mind? So you may feel that your mind is not crystal clear, that it's busy, agitated, cluttered. That is not the nature of your mind according to Tibetan Buddhism. The true nature of your mind in this tradition is it is clear and knowing. Clarity and awareness is your mind. So you may say, I'm not aware of the clarity nature. This is how we get in touch with that. So we are habituated with patterns of imbalance, sometimes called delusion or afflictive emotions, like anger, attachment, confusion, jealousy, pride, doubt, forgetfulness, laziness, fear, depression. I think you get the idea. The normal human condition is we suffer from these imbalances simply because there's a previous moment of that imbalance in our mind. We're habituated in that way. Enlightened consciousness is not habituated in that way. It's clear and knowing. So as you gaze out at the expanse of this lake, thoughts will distract you. It's very normal. Can you imagine the thought comes from the depth of the clarity of the lake and rises to the surface where a bubble forms? If it's a small, mundane thought, small bubble. And that small bubble creates small ripples on the surface of the lake. Small disturbance. You can watch that bubble. Eventually it will pop or dissolve back into the surface, and the ripples will subside. And you want to turn your attention, your focus, your concentration back to the clarity of the lake. Building your concentration there, the clarity of the lake that is like your mind. Now notice if you have a lot of distraction, a lot of thoughts, some create bigger bubbles, a lot of bubbles, and a lot of ripples and disturbance to the clarity. That's not really the nature of the lake. So let those thoughts go, let the bubbles go. They dissolve, they pop, they have no essence. Once again, returning your awareness to that clarity. Try your best. So return yourself sitting on the banks of that lake, and then slowly return yourself to this room. When you're ready, slowly open your eyes. So if that meditation is helpful, you can lengthen it and return yourself to it as much as possible. So the more you do the meditations every day, it lends some consistency, and you know how you reach for it. It becomes that habit, like that. So again, we're so habituated with other experiences, and the reason we are is we do them every day. We're used to doing it over and over. So are you sure you're choosing the right habits to habituate yourself with, right? So it's a really easy meditation. And there's other ways to do meditations on the nature of mind. But I just find it super easy. You're agitated, you're at a business meeting, it's not going well. You know, something came up in your family, you're not happy with this person. Make some time for yourself, okay? So we're not making the proper time for ourselves. We're making times for ourselves, junking it up with surfing the internet and shopping for things online and looking at Amazon for this and looking, right? That's not your self-compassion time. That's not taking care of yourself time, okay? I know they talk about retail therapy and, come on, right? So think about what habits, what you have to do a meditation, and at the end, how do you feel? How do you feel from the meditation? You check your mind. You should check everything I'm saying. Be discerning, check up. Don't just accept, okay, she's in maroon robes, bald head, great. No, you check and make sure it works for you. There's other paths, right? You don't need to be Buddhist to be happy, okay? But I check, for me, this is an authentic path. It works, right? Keeping my mind out of the gutter, okay, it works. But there's exercises, but you have to apply yourself to the exercises. So I'm sorry, it's a path that takes effort, okay? So if you want something easy, this is not the path, okay? But you want something with great reward, this is the path. But you have to check up for yourself, find it. That. So that's just one quick exercise. And people also say to me, I looked at the news, I can't watch, it's horrible, it's horrible. That's what the news does. They keep it sensational because that's what people want to see. Isn't it interesting when, and I'm always fascinated by this, like what is this about when you're driving, there's an accident ahead of you, right? So it creates traffic because everyone has to slow down and look. What are we looking at? I don't want to see a severed arm there. Why do we have to? There's some kind of fascination, you know, with the sensational, okay? So what happens is there's a lot of good stuff going on the planet right now. A lot. It's just not getting news coverage. Some of you are aware of what's going on in your own community. I've talked to people yesterday, a number of you. People are doing great stuff. Great stuff. Whether it's even just your practice is great stuff. You kind of go, I got to take care of my mind. I'm trying to do this practice. I'm not doing it great, but I'm trying. For me, that's exciting. That's not going to get news coverage, right? It's not going to sell ads, that kind of stuff. Okay, so let's be reasonable and let's balance and really look at reality of what's really happening, not what the news is telling you. So if you're looking at all that stuff, and that's where how much of your day is centered on what's going on your phone? I'm just curious, what percentage? How much time do you spend on some device? Anybody? What are you doing, honestly? 2 hours a day. 30% of the day, okay. 8 hours a day, yeah. Okay, right. TV, yeah, and people watch TV. How much TV do you think you watch a day? Okay, right? 5, 6 hours, yeah. So this is where we are. And then what happens with TV, I'll just use TV as an example. There's ads on TV, right? Okay. Do you mute it or do you leave them on? Okay, because you have the thing that fast forwards. Great. Yeah, because there's brainwashing. So people, when I got into Buddhism, I had one friend, she was very alarmed. I had found a path. I found something, it was a real jewel for me when I got into the Dharma. And she got threatened, and her life's never gone very well, unfortunately, all these years. But so she got very threatened, and I found this path, and I was really kind of lit up, and I was progressing and doing really well, And then she accused me at one point, I think they brainwashed you. So she said, we have this word brain, we're scared of that. And we should be cautious in the States. There is brainwashing, and there are cults, and you have to be very cautious. And I was very cautious when I got into Buddhism, very discerning and not trusting anything. I was really like, what's that about? Okay? But here's another thing, okay? How's your mind? Does it need washing? Because mine does. So on one level, I thought she said brainwashing, and I'm like, I'm still me. With the Dharma, I've controlled everything in my life. Nobody's controlling me. My teacher might suggest, if I ask him for advice, he might suggest, you could do this, but I've asked him. You ask teachers for help. You go to a consultant and you go, can you help me with my finances? So if you're going to leave and not follow what they're saying, why'd you go to the consultant? So this is my guru. This is somebody taking care of my mind, helping me take care of my mind. It's the most precious thing you got. So I asked him advice. He sent me to do something. I did it. Hard work? Absolutely. I have no problem working hard, right? Great reward? Absolutely. Unbelievable transformation from following the advice. But brainwashing? So I checked that. And then at one point I said to her, well, I thought to myself, I didn't say to her because I thought she'd ride that wave. But I thought, she said brainwashing, but it's about my mind, different than the brain in Buddhism. And I thought, my mind needs some washing, right? Needs some cleaning out. Because there were those imbalances I just mentioned. Imbalances, okay? So it's something to think about, like that. But there wasn't any other loss of control or what we think of brainwashing, not at all. But you have to just realistically look at how much time am I creating virtuous habits in my mind? We talked about TV some years ago. Okay, because I remember I said, Andre, you gotta reduce that. You got. Yep, because I know you do a lot of beneficial things. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So here's what happens now, and he's just being honest with himself. It's great. Is watch these other habits. Can you reduce like a half an hour from it, and move that into some virtuous practice that leaves a more virtuous imprint on the mind? Because there's a habit of watching TV. So as soon as you have this little thing, and I know other people, as soon as there's that little space, I remember I stayed with a friend in New York some years ago, whatever, she wanted me to come up in the summer, and I was there 5 days with her, and with her husband and some friends, and it was really fun, right? And then at one point she suddenly looked at me, and I could tell she was a little agitated with something, and she goes, I need to kind of go on and do my phone time now, and do my Wordle with my friend, and do my, she had these different things that every day she was involved. And we all have these times we're doing our phone time, right? You need to, for me, I've got emails to catch up, I do a lot of it on my phone. There'll be WhatsApp messages or things like that, travel things, So check what you're doing, because that habit, as soon as you got the space, back into the habit. Is the habit beneficial for your mind? Right? You have to check. First, the first thing is the awareness. Is that habit beneficial for my mind? And then I kind of realize, okay, it's really not. So can I then reduce reduce and just borrow, make it realistic so you'll do it, 15 minutes, 30 minutes from that. And it's going to be hard in the beginning. Every time we make a new habit, it's hard to, and then say, well, instead of that, I am going to pick up that Dharma book I've been meaning to read for 3 months, and I'll just read a chapter of that or a few pages of that. I'll make myself a 10 pages a day. I'll do that. Can you change some sort of habit? Or that's when I'm going to get on my cushion, get in the seat, and I'll just try to have a little meditation session. Or I'll do that meditation that I learned in the class, or I'm going to do that class, or I'm going to study that topic. Takes effort, I know, but we make great effort. We just don't make it in the right directions. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. You just have to start looking at what we're focused on. And what do you focus on the devices? Is it violent stories and violent things and, things like that? What kind of movies do you watch? And do you binge watch? So I got calls from people. It's funny it's not really funny, but with COVID, when there's a world crisis, my business goes up, right? I'm really popular in world crises, okay? And everybody starts calling and texting and emailing, like, I need help. And one of the things I got, this is the first time I got this, was a lot of people, and it was themselves, and some of their kids were contacting me, and this was after the first 6 months, and then I was getting these contacts of, please help me deal with my binge watching. People binge watching shows. Now, what happens when you binge watch, okay? First of all, you're in a bad position of how you're watching. 90% of people they're like, my neck hurts, my back hurts, my hip hurts, and because they're in some bad position in bed or on the couch or the pillow, and you got your device, you got your TV, there you are, And then it goes next episode. Believe me, I've watched TV, okay, I know. Next episode, and you just, all of a sudden it rolls in the next episode, and there I am again. Yeah. And then everybody's eating during those episodes, and a lot of people eating in a reclining position. So how many people ended up, I don't know if this is this audience, the number of people that told me they themselves or their kids ended up with hiatal hernias or acid reflux because they're all sitting either at a table, eating like this, eating lying down, eating and then lying down so they can continue the binge watching. Anybody like that? Anything happen like that in here? Maybe not. Okay, you're all very healthy. Wonderful. It was amazing getting these calls. I was like, what? Wait, I said, get her away from the kitchen table with she's not sitting properly, or. So slowly you start to watch, and then any of you that if you do binge watch, you have to notice awareness again. Practice starts with awareness. It all starts with awareness. I'm not happy. Like, this particular system is not working for me, or this system is working for me. So I want more of that. I'm going in that direction. So how do you feel after you binge watch? Just curious. Not empty, not in a good way, right? Not the good empty, right? Not good, I hear. Anybody feel good after binge watching?
Andre, use the microphone.
That's good? Yeah. Yeah, so I really get involved with characters. So it's just like reading a book for me.
Right.
If it's a really, really good book, I can't put it down. And so if there's a story going on and I'm following it, it's like reading a good novel. It's hard for me to put it down because I want to know what's going on. I want to know what the ending is going to be.
Right.
So sometimes I can feel really good after I watch that because depending upon the show.
Upon the show. So here's something to think about is I'm a big novel reader. I like to read novels, but I read other books, and I like to read a lot. And at one point, and I adjusted my novel reading, because I'm not really happy with a lot of the novels I've been reading. They're just not well written or things, and few and far between. So then Rinpoche one day was talking to a nun friend of mine. He was coming into a center, and she had a book in her hand, and it was a non-Dharma mystery novel or something. And then Rinpoche said, "Oh, what?" And she was near me, and he said, "Oh, what book is that?" What book? And she told him, and then he said, "It's not true, the book?" And then she said no, and then Rinpoche is like, why would you read it if it's not true? I know that was for me, I know, because you always get things through other students and it was something that really made me think about. And then I've heard people, one time I was in a gym, showering, getting dressed, and I heard on the other side of the lockers, I heard some drama they were talking about, themselves, about the names, this person, and he did this, and she said that, and he did that, and I heard this whole thing, and I thought, wow, that's really kind of serious what these people are going through. I was just listening, and it ended up, it was a TV show they're talking about. But they were so involved in the drama of it. So you want to think about, is that where you want to have what the imprints in your mind? Even if, I know they're good characters, and there is entertainment, and we do need breaks. I get it. We do need breaks at times. But how much do you want where that starts being early? What about, thinking about the life story of Milarepa? That's an incredible story that happened. That, now you go, well, ancient days, those biographies of the masters, they're really boring, and Milarepa's isn't very boring. It's like he's like the greatest action hero, basically, of what he was able to do without land-moving equipment, right? And all the, sci-fi things. So just think about what imprint it does leave, some of the images of, and one of the things I was thinking is, years ago there was a film called The Silence of the Lambs. Did anyone see that film? Okay, horror film, from a horror novel. And I had seen the film. I didn't know it was from a book. I didn't know about the book, but I'd seen it once and then my sister was telling me, we were talking about, now, this was later in life, giving ourselves permission not to finish a book if you don't like it. Right? I used to always feel like I have to finish it. I started it. But if you don't like it, why am I going to waste my time? Right? And so she said, yeah, the last book she did, this is before Silence of the Lambs was made. She was reading Silence of the Lambs. And so she goes, yeah, the last book I picked up was something about a guy that was keeping these women imprisoned in a pit in his home and using their skin for, and she's like, did I need to read that book? Yeah. So think about when you're dying, do you want the Silence of the Lambs on your mind? Do you want that coming up on your mind? A guy who eats people? So you really want to think about, these are making imprints in your gross consciousness. Those are your active thoughts, experiences, and they're making deeper imprints in your subtle consciousness. And then the most subtle consciousness is what is there when you're dying and goes on to reincarnate. Do you want those imprints there? So now granted, we do engage in some of those things. You just want to limit. You want to have balance where there's more virtue and less of the other stuff that keeps you away from it. Like that. There are educational TV programs. There are TV programs that are incredibly creative and help you get a break and get a blast. I remember at the center when I was working at Vajrapani Institute in California for a long time. It was very intense work at a residential retreat center, running it. And at times you're pushing and you're working too hard, like anything we do. And you get kind of dense and leaden and you lose your sense of humor. And you get this Tibetan condition they call lung. L-U-N-G, lung. It's just a wind imbalance. It's just like irritability and anxiety. It's just like that. And you don't sleep, and you're irritable, and you don't want to eat, and just standard things like that. So in Tibetan system, they call it lung. And I remember at one point I was working too hard, and my boyfriend at the time, he's like, let's go to the movies. Let's go into Santa Cruz, we'll go to the movies. And I'm like, great. And we went to the movies, and we saw some sweeping, British, the British countryside, whatever, and it was perfect. Just lifted me out of my, very helpful. So just think about what you are engaging in that way that can keep you more balanced. And you do need to poke at those stories that you're watching. The news especially, is it accurate? Is it accurate what you're engaging with? Right? Because there's a lot of false stuff out there. And then you go, well, this is happening here. And it's hard to trust anymore. And I'll really date myself now, but there was a news guy in the old days, okay, some of you will appreciate this, named Walter Cronkite, right? We could trust him. When he delivered the news, you knew that was the news, right? Tom Brokaw. There were certain people that even though that they still had their slants based on their networks, but generally, and it's not like that anymore, right? So I just really limit the news. I check, and you have to check what are the sources of your news. There's a lot of crappy sources, but they're all going to have a slant, and I don't spend a lot of time on it, at least to know, because I travel a lot, I need to know what country I'm going into. Is there a problem? And there have been some problems. So I just want to keep myself somewhat abreast, and then do your practice, work with your mind. So here's some other things you can do that are helpful, that I find really helpful. So a lot of times, especially in the States, we don't have as good a safety net as they have in many countries in Europe. And having just lived in Amsterdam for 3 months last autumn, and I teach in Europe every year, but living there for 3 months, I really explored the system. They want me to come back there, they want me to come back longer, and I was fascinated with how they do it. It's not perfect, not a perfect system, but they pay $150 a month, each citizen, for the best health care in the world. And I went to a doctor at one point in Amsterdam, and I'm really like, this is the way it should be, right? We could have that in the States, okay? You need to insist upon that with your representatives, right? Who unfortunately aren't really working for us these days, right? But you still can participate and write letters and, things like that, and vote and things like that. So it's interesting. So because there's a bigger safety net, they get about 6 to 8 weeks off on average a year, holiday, not including bank holidays, okay? So there were people that came to me, and one woman said, I'm going to Sri Lanka for 3 weeks. I'm going to Sri Lanka, and I'm participating in a volunteer program there to help these kids, great. And I'm also coming to your retreat for a week. She has time to do that. And she has another 2 weeks of the year off, average job. Nothing, not any high-level, big executive job, right? So they're more relaxed. The pace is different. Is this container. Similar in France, incredible healthcare system in France. Everybody's covered, right? So you don't have this stressor that I just went through because I moved states again. Every time you move state, if you're on low-income insurance, you have to reapply in that state, and every state is different. In Vermont, it took me 1 month to get covered. In Pennsylvania, it took me 2 months. In California, it took me 4 months to get covered, okay? But California had an incredible superior safety net of people on low-income insurance. Pennsylvania, not that great. So so again, I have to go back and the application, and then they want your tax forms, and it's just so stressful for us. You have to pick this, and did you do that right, and that's not working, and this insurance, So, but anyway, this is the situation we have. Unless you choose, I have many friends that are thinking to retire in Holland, in France, in Portugal. You can do that as an American citizen. They will want some taxes for it. It may be better peace of mind. People criticize Scandinavia. They pay high taxes. They do. Socialized systems. Okay? There's some people in this country that go, we don't want a socialized system. That's bad. They're socialists, they say. Okay? So then I want to say to them, do you not want Social Security? Because that's a socialized system. So you don't want that? You don't want Medicare? That's a socialized system. Okay, so Scandinavia, they criticize, but when they do surveys of the world, those are some of the happiest people. Because think about it, the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, Mahayana motivation for all living beings, I want to benefit all living beings, okay, I would be happy to pay higher taxes if I knew that everybody was covered in the States. Wouldn't you sleep better at night? Rather than having a few chosen few here, and this is going to get, smaller and smaller, this elite 1%, and it's going to be masses that are struggling, and it's already going on in the States. Okay, because I just came from California. That's where I was living for 2 years. In LA, I was living in Northern California, but in Los Angeles right now, I believe, roughly, there's 40,000 unhoused people in Los Angeles. 40,000 is 10,000 people larger than the township I'm living in right now near Philadelphia. 40,000 people. Because the climate is easy. So that if I was homeless, I'd go there as well. I go to Southern California, right? So for me to sleep at night knowing there's these people living, I saw them. And you go to San Francisco, they're under underpasses, living in tents, and I don't feel comfortable like sleeping in my bed. I'm happy I can sleep in my bed, but so in Europe it's a little bit different. There are unhoused people in Europe, not very many. I didn't see very many in Amsterdam at all, but there are some, but not like in the United States, right? So it's something to think about. But then here we are in this situation, okay? So how do you balance yourself and your mind in the situation? And so, yes. Question.
If you can wait for the mic, Orlando.
Hi. Thank you so much for. Is it on? Yep. Thank you so much for being here. I would like to ask your permission to say something that is a bit on the opposite end of what you just mentioned, describing Europe. Can I?
Yes, please.
So, first, I'm not American. Second, I lived in Germany for almost 7 years. And
you said you are an American or not?
I am not.
You are not, okay.
So I think that there is a lot of wealth in Europe, and those systems look very good. Because in part, they were created out of the resources that those countries took from our countries for, probably 300 to 400 years.
Yep.
So they are still collecting benefits from what they did to many countries in Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Africa. So they have a welfare system, in part because of technologies that they derive from that period of their history, during colonialism and the imperial period of Europe. And during the 20th century, after the Second World War, I think the Americans heavily subsidized the military sector in Europe.
Yep.
So, for instance, they don't spend almost too much money on the military, on their militaries. And the Americans actually spent, and technically they had to back them up through NATO.
Yep.
So I do understand that there are very bad things in this country that can be fixed. And I do believe, like you, that there is a different system to reorganize healthcare and social security in this country. I just think that if we look at Europe, we probably should take the whole picture when we talk about it.
Yes, absolutely.
And
No,
thank you so much for having this discussion.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're absolutely right, because I'm not saying these countries are great, and America's had a lot of imperialism and colonialism. So you're just saying because we're putting the bases there, we're not paying, Europe isn't paying for it, so you can have a better system in Europe as well. But also they're reaping the benefits of taking the undeveloped world like that.
Yes, I
Yeah.
think that their wealth is based upon extraction of
Yeah,
the pain and the resources that our people provided to them.
yeah,
So, of course, that's just one point of view.
yeah,
But economically speaking, that's probably what's happening. And right now, for instance, a lot of countries are having a population collapse. Like the birth rates are extremely low. So the economy in Europe in 20 years is going to be weaker than the economy of Europe right now. You see that, for instance, Great Britain with Brexit, or there are some countries like Germany that are desperate for trying to get, a boost in their economy these days because the population is dropping, the migration rates are dropping. So I see your point. Again, I just think that Europe as an example is a complicated example.
yes, yeah.
I think that's the point.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's all complicated in some ways, and there's not going to be a perfect system at all. It's just a little bit more of having the broader view. Can I keep in my heart and mind of an ability to start first with my own mind, taking care of all beings as much as possible? So figuring out also how I am in the space, and it could be as simple as I'm entering the grocery store. How am I in the space? Because that's where the universe starts. I enter a certain area and you're bumping up against different people. If I'm bumping up in a hostile way in general, okay, it just creates more of that in the world. That ripple effect again goes out. So how do I keep it a little bit more peaceful in general? And it has to start with your own mind. So it's my own mind, but with the broader motivation. I never lose the bigger motion. It's not just about taking care of me. For me, it's taking care of myself and my mind, getting my mind into a cleaner space, happier space, gentler space, because that's how you're going to be with all other beings, right? And then you can understand the bigger context as well. And there isn't going to be a perfect system. And one thing I was thinking, because there is a karma, unfortunately, in the global situation where the undeveloped countries are going to suffer so much more. They always have, unfortunately, based on the richer countries. And it's the same way in societies that the richer people benefit more than the poorer people and things like that. But there's a whole rebalancing going on the planet now. I see what's going on just in the States, in my old neighborhoods where I've grown up and lived. And the whole demographics of those neighborhoods are changing, and based on the birth rate and things. So how do I deal with my mind walking into this situation? And one of the things I wanted to mention is some brilliant self-compassion techniques that come from a psychologist named Kristen Neff. And I've done a lot of self-compassion workshops and things. Jeremy Germer, I think it is, also has beautiful self-compassion books. These are Americans that do it. There's people in other countries that also have self-compassion techniques, exercises, courses. But one thing I love is to consider a few things when you're engaging in the world and suddenly you're not happy. Okay, you can certainly engage when you're happy, but what happens when you're not happy? Things aren't going well. And there's 3 basic ways I really like dealing with it that Kristen Neff elaborates on. Is number 1 is using your mindfulness. Number 2 is thinking about your shared humanity. Number 3 is loving kindness exercises. She has like a self-compassion break, for instance. And I just give you an example. You're coming in contact, and one of the things I noticed, because there's a little bit, and it just happened, Holland, my experience in Amsterdam, where there's a little bit gentler, kinder approach, I noticed. But again, your world is not external, it comes from your mind. It comes from your mind. That's the hardest thing to get clear on in Buddhism. Comes from your own internal experience. That's creating your external reality. So whatever space I showed up last September in Holland, in the Netherlands, right? Whatever I had gone through, because I went through a kind of rough couple-year patch helping this other center, and then I landed in the Netherlands. I must have purified something at the time, okay? Because when I got to the Netherlands, it just felt kinder and more spacious in general. And I'll give you an example. Some of you are familiar, those of you from Germany. So in Holland, it's a big bicycle culture, okay? Big bicycle lanes, often separate from the car lanes, okay? Well, that was really helpful, because in the States, you're with the traffic. God forbid you don't have a helmet on. You have to have a helmet. Nobody wears a helmet in Holland, okay? So big bicycle lanes. I didn't know about the bicycle lanes. So one day, I'm going to the grocery store, and I'm standing right in the middle of one of the bicycle lanes. This is a traffic lane. This is like you standing in the middle of traffic. I didn't know. And and they zing along, right? Boom, they come along, and this woman stops right in front of me with her bicycle. And I turn, and I'm like, whoa, and she turns, and then very sweet expression on her face. And she looks at me, and she's like, and then I went, oh, I'm so sorry, and I quickly got out of the lane, but no hostility, Now, had that been Philadelphia, my hometown, right? And I love Philadelphia, and I love Philadelphians, they are my peeps, right? So, there could have been, I've been sometimes in a grocery store in Philadelphia, bumped into somebody by accident, you brush somebody in the aisle, and there's a little bit of like, hey, right? And it's like, so there's this edge. There can be an edge, not necessarily. In Holland, I didn't feel any edge at the time, whatever was going on for me, but I will acknowledge it's coming from my mind. So my mind had the karma arising that it was going to be a pleasant, gentle, friendly experience. That was my entire 3 months there, okay? Then on a funny note, these women went away that are attached to the center, and one of them said, "You want to use my bicycle?" Right? Sure. Right? Thank you. I'd like to use your bicycle. I'm not a big bicycle person, but I can ride a bicycle, and I thought, and it was a great way to get around. Okay? It's free. You get exercise, and it was half the time of taking any train or anything like that. You're there in a second. Plenty of bike parking, right? But just like your car, there's a lot of bicycles, a lot of bike parking. Sometimes all the bicycles are knocked down. It's just, but you're there, but you need to remember where you parked your bicycle. And all the bicycles look alike. So I parked my bicycle clear on this railing in front of the museum that had this side that I watched. And I looked. But when I came out, there was that railing on the other side of the museum as well. And I'm running around going, could somebody have stolen the bike? I could not find the bicycle. It was so funny, till it finally was, when you leave your car and you don't know which level you parked on, and you're like, did I put it on this lot? And so they lent me this bicycle, and I, initially I went out like a grandmother, and because the center warned me, they were very worried about her lending me this bicycle. I don't know. So they started saying, don't go at rush hour. Don't go during the tour. Don't go to the tourist areas. Too crowded. Don't go past anybody. Don't pass anybody on the bike. Just, So I was like a little paranoid. I got on the bike and I'm in robes, but it was good. It worked with the robes, but I was very nervous in the beginning. So I was very slow. So after 3 weeks, I come back to the center. I'm teaching a class. We come in. I said to everyone, I have an announcement to make. If you can sit down. And they're all nervous, like, is she leaving? Is she, what's happening? And they all sat down, and I said, I passed someone today. Right? And they're like, and I said, and I'm here to so it's a great culture to do. But you want to understand when you're bumping up against someone and it's not working and there's hostility. Okay? One of the unfortunate situations in the States is people have this idea, it's happening externally, it's caused externally. Someone's doing it to me, right? They don't like me. Then we operate from insecurity, so something's wrong with me. Then we operate through a very dominant, self-cherishing mind experience with self-grasping. It's got to be about me. They must be talking about me. Okay? So all these issues that are imbalanced, not having a direct perception of emptiness, on and on, right, suddenly create my negative reactive response to the person. So maybe they're not a Dharma person. They come in and suddenly, hey, you bumped into me. Okay? We have to counter from our side. It's the only thing we can do. So the beginning is everything comes from your mind. It's a hard one to swallow. Lama Zopa Rinpoche's main teaching the last few years of his life, everything comes from your mind. Okay? Here's an example. Please put your hand up. How many people here like eggplant? Put your hand up. Okay? Put your hands down. How many do not like eggplant? Okay. Is it the eggplant? Like when you don't like eggplant, you're like, ooh, eggplant, out there, right? But some people here like eggplant. Is it from the eggplant side? No, it's from your mind. You've got a seed in your mind to like or not like eggplant. It's not the eggplant, because some people like it, some people don't like it. It's the same with other people. You have a karmic arisal for someone to be hostile to you. That's where it comes from. That's the hardest thing for us to get, because immediately it's the other guy. They did it to me. My boss is a jerk. I hate that woman at work. The neighbor did this. They took out my bush. This person did that. That guy got in front of me with his car. It's always external. Look where you are then. Look how peaceful your mind is. It's not peaceful. Okay. What if I own it? Somebody just cut in front of me without signaling. Have I ever done that to people? Right? Now in Philadelphia, the joke is, one time I'm driving with my brother. He's driving, and I knew he had to get in the other lane. I said, well, aren't you going to get over? Do you want to signal? He goes, no, because if I put my signal on, then everyone will speed up and not let me in. Right? That's Philadelphia. Not entirely. City of brotherly love, okay? and sisterly love, right? So it's different. Once you're from Philadelphia and you know how it operates, they're really great. They're really great folks. So, but again, everything comes from my mind. So you check when you get hostile. You know, you want to give somebody the finger in your car, right? How do you feel after you do it? You feel good about it? Really? Do you really feel good about it? Think about what you just said to them with a gesture. Think about how you feel when somebody does it to you. Right? People get lost driving. People, all of a sudden, they realize, oh my God, it's a turn lane. I need to be over there. We make mistakes. So if you add some gentleness with yourself, I've done this where I'm suddenly like, oh, I'm in the wrong lane. I can either choose to turn and then circle back around, or I can look over here and wave to somebody, and sometimes they'll be nice and let me in, okay? But a lot of it coming from being gentle with myself, not shoving in between people and cutting somebody off. If I'm gentle with myself, I'm going to assess the scene and decide. Sometimes you have to decide quickly. I'll just make the turn and circle back around, or, oh, it looks like there's a little space. This woman, she made eye contact with me. She's letting me in. Thank you so much. You know, I can flash my blinkers. Thank you. We do stuff like that. Wave to them like that. It's nice to give a wave. I acknowledge. I see you. Thank you so much. You're just very kind to me. Sometimes if the person's side, I thank you. Is a nice connection. Positivity, harmony. Okay? So just for me taking ownership, the gentleness. So here's some of these breaks, Kristen Neff, okay? Self-compassion break. You're having a hard day, all the doors and windows are shutting, not happy, okay? You can be in your office cubicle. You can be home. You can go to a bathroom. You know, it's the only place you can get alone, in the bathroom, okay? You're sitting down and you're suffering right now. Could be anything that you're suffering from, whatever. And can you have a moment, return to your breath, 2 minutes, return to the breath, just settle. As soon as you return to the breath, for one, it's a huge device, things start calming down. Most of you know that. Things start calming down. So now I've got settled on the breath. Mindfulness, okay? Beginning exercise with mindfulness, right? And there I am, just sitting in the bathroom, sitting in my cubicle. This is suffering, period. Or I'm uncomfortable. And sometimes that's all, good enough. I'm uncomfortable right now. Or it could be, this sucks. And that's samsara. That's samsara's nature. It's just like that sometimes, okay? But know you can get out of samsara. Know you can get out. You're not stuck in this forever. But know you can get out of samsara. Make a pledge in yourself. I'm going to adjust something next week. But do it. Something realistic. I will make an adjustment, okay, to help me get out of samsara more quickly, okay? First of all, you owe it to yourself, let alone all living beings that are waiting for you to get enlightened because they need help, okay? But at least start it for yourself. I'll do something and turn up a little something, 15 minutes more into this little practice I wanted to do, 15 minutes less of that. Make it realistic so you'll do it. Okay? We talked about the buddy system that Andre's still doing. We had buddies in here at one point. Somebody picked somebody new, met somebody new at the center. You know, do you want to be my buddy? And they exchange, they do text, they do email, they meet for coffee, whatever you choose to do. You and your buddy choose. And it could be a little in the morning. Did you do your practice this morning? Did you set your motivation? Let's read this book together. Let's start that course at the center together. Do you want to do it? I'm going to do it online. Great. Let's do it together. And you check on each other. Well, Andre's still doing that with his buddy. And he said it's enormously helpful. We can check at the end if anybody wants to buddy up. You can put your hands up and you can find a buddy. Okay? You can think about it. It's really helpful to have that person. Okay? But sometimes just doing this with mindfulness is simply, this is uncomfortable right now. This sucks. And you just breathe in, you breathe out, you breathe in, you breathe out. Right? This is samsara, that's its nature. It's a broken situation, I'm sorry, okay? And samsara just means to cycle in Sanskrit, to turn, and you're turning through birth, old age, sickness, and death, all of that, is uncomfortable, okay? And you can get out of samsara. Every single one of you in this room, permanently, which is a permanent cessation of all your mental afflictions. Wouldn't that be nice? Okay? So you want to think about that. You don't want to just leave yourself in this is suffering, but just having a little self-compassion break for myself right now. I'm struggling. My neighbor next door, right before I left, was diagnosed with cancer. She's 42. She has 2 school-age kids. She's wonderful. We're very close. Wonderful woman. She's going to beat it. It's a treatable type of cancer, but she's scared. She's nervous and all this. And she kept saying, I want to tell you, I'm not telling everybody, I want to tell you, can you help me? Can you do prayers for me? Can you? I said, absolutely. We're going to get through this together. You know, this is very treatable. Let's see what's going on and stuff. But it's so I just said to her, you know, sometimes it's just, this sucks right now. Like she's in the doctor's office waiting for this, and you breathe in, you breathe out, you know. And some things are bigger for people, you know. And that's the best you can do sometimes, just with mindfulness like that. Here's number 2. Self-compassion techniques again. Shared humanity. Another way to deal with it, shared humanity. What does that mean? And so here's one thing I wanted to add. When you're doing this is uncomfortable, this sucks. Okay, I'm suffering, this is suffering, right? What I love is moving into shared humanity is you're not the only one on the planet experiencing this. So I'm going through something, and what a lot of suffering, especially extreme suffering, tells some people is, I'm the only one going through this. The worst suffering I think people endure is the sudden loss of a child. And there's some really tragic things that happen to people's kids. And it's just not the way it should be, not the way the world. I want to go to a world system where that doesn't exist, basically. It's too tragic, it's too painful. So the people I know, many people I know that have lost kids in a variety of ways, different ages, you know, and it's too toppling in the beginning. You don't even know who you are at the time. I can only imagine, right? And then you reach a space, if you can, reach into your practice, your heart, because there's other people that are going through that. And if you can just think, you're holding your pain, and sometimes it's unholdable, it's too much. Right, but whatever it is, my neighbor's cancer diagnosis, you know, you're breathing in, you're breathing out. Other people are going through this. You get to a point where you're a year out from the tragedy, and there's somebody that's just going through it now, again, that initial shock, you know. So again, and there's different words you can say to yourself, and you'd say this in a meditation. You close your eyes, sit quietly, you breathe in, you breathe out, I'm not alone. You can put it into your own words. Here's some other words. Others are experiencing this right now. Same thing that I'm experiencing. Many people go through this on the planet, just like me. So acknowledging all these other things right now. The biggest tragedy, what's so hard to witness right now, are the children of Gaza, I call them. Children of Gaza, which I would also include the young people that died in Israel in the beginning of this raid, and the children of Gaza, starving, bombed, lost entire families, orphaned. So now, unfortunately, that region, which has been a hotbed for centuries, is now going to have, with these kids, another 70, 80 years of unhealed trauma that they're going to be wearing, which creates anger, fear, depression, anxiety, and on, you know. So again, in thinking of that, like, let's expand and try to think of them, and it lifts you out of some things. You know, it just could make it a little bit more bearable of what you're experiencing. You're not alone. Not alone in this experience. And you'd sit with that for as long as you can. And maybe you need to put your hand here when you're doing it. Maybe you need to sit like this whatever you need. Right? This is us beginning to take care of ourselves so we can take care of others. You don't want to lose the bigger motivation. Okay. And then we've got third one, dealing with loving kindness. Self-compassion with loving kindness. Okay? So often with loving kindness, if I take a break, stop, my hand just automatically goes here. And there's sometimes we're really struggling. Something just happens. You know, sometimes you're at a Buddhist center. Some of you will relate to this. People have notions about Buddhist centers. Everybody's peaceful and they all get along. Don't you love that one? We used to hire people at Vajrapani, and we would invite them for lunch, and they'd sit around the table with the staff, and one of our first questions is, why would you like to work at the center? I want to be at a really peaceful place where everyone gets along. And we were like, take it down the road, right? It's a big myth. People think because people are Buddhists that they are Buddhas, that they're perfect. No, they're Buddhists. That means they suffer from anger and anxiety and attachment and fear and jealousy. And anytime you have people, ordinary human beings, they suffer from delusion and imbalance in your mind. Okay, and when you bump up against another person with delusion, that creates problems. That's human nature, that's normal, that's samsara. Okay? So some Buddhist centers I've been to, somebody be really unkind to me, believe it or not, right? Unbelievable, you know. And I just go back to my little space and and you can ask yourself in that space, little meditation, close your eyes, little breathing. And I might think, so what kind of kindness do I need to show myself right now? What kind act can I do for myself right now? And think of something tangible. What helps you cope in a kind, gentle way, right? What helps you cope? For some people, they want to have the chocolate candy. Some people want to go out for a walk. Some people want to listen to beautiful music. Right? Somebody might want to take a warm bath. Somebody might want to have a massage, or buy somebody flowers. What is the kindness that you feel you can show yourself? And really think of something, but maybe you just sit there, and maybe it's just sending yourself some loving thoughts. I am good enough. I tried my best. I'm showing up for my practice, giving it my best shot. Like that. Okay, so you have mindfulness, shared humanity, loving kindness. Loving kindness. But you want to have some techniques readily at your fingertips. With loving kindness, make sure the experiences you feel of making an offering to yourself, doing something kind for yourself, is a good habit. Eating the entire pint of ice cream, because usually afterwards you don't feel good. So that could be so you want to look at that and make sure they are really positive conditioning exercises you're reaching for. And that takes people a little time to establish. But make sure it's really something healthy, good, that you really do feel better. And initially you can feel a little rusty, like I'm not comfortable with this yet. So have a little list of what you can do that you feel this is, and maybe it's just loving thoughts. Maybe you're not used to saying, I am worth something. Practice that. Like affirmations. I am totally worthy of receiving love and giving love. Everybody is. Everybody deserves that. Okay? But some people don't have a habit of that. So it takes a little time to establish that. Right? Questions, comments?
Anything? If you're in the Kadampa, just raise your hand. If you're online, if you're on Zoom, you can put the little hand up. And if you're on YouTube, you can write it in the chat.
Is it on? Okay, yeah. Yeah, so I think most people who know me, you were talking about losing a loved one. I lost my son to murder, and so I was able to forgive the man who murdered my son, and have compassion for him, and that was the thing that helped me to be able to heal, and and opening up to other people, realizing that I'm not the only one who's lost a loved one in this way. And so I started working with organizations and working with people who have lost loved ones the same way. And I work with an organization, Coalition Against the Death Penalty, North Carolina Coalition Against the Death Penalty. And so we have a family survivors group. It's a support group, but not like a pity party or anything like that. We've all been able to finally reach that place where we could be able to forgive the person who took our loved one. And now we've expanded that. It even included those individuals who have lost loved ones to death, executions, because that is still their suffering too. That's their child.
Of course, yeah.
So I find by expanding compassion out in this way, it really, really benefits me in ways, it motivates me. And when working in prison, I work with guys who've murdered others and stuff like that, have done the same thing. And I love them and have compassion for them and work with them as well. It really, really, this is one of the things we can do if we've lost, I say number one thing is find a way to forgive, find a way to have compassion.
Yep.
And if you want to heal,
Yeah,
that's the way.
Yeah. Thank you.
I've finished this book. I'm working on it. It'll be out pretty soon.
Fantastic.
But about that, based upon losing my son and how.
And when did your son die?
2007. Yeah. And
So sorry.
Yeah. But
Thank you. No, that's
quite welcome.
yeah.
I just wanted to share that because you were talking about that.
Yeah, because forgiveness is really a huge tool. And I mentioned yesterday in here, one book I've used is Archbishop Desmond Tutu's book on forgiving, or Forgiving, I think it's called. He wrote with his daughter. It's very, very effective to forgive. But the other thing Andre's talking about is giving back. So you suffer an enormous tragedy that in the beginning you're just kind of a puddle. You need to take care of yourself first and realize, and then you can give back. And some people I know that have lost children like that, and in different ways started to enter a support group when they're totally broken on some level, totally opened up. When you're broken out like that, can you put the pieces back maybe in a different way that's more beneficial? And then they started being advocates in the support groups. And so when they were a few years along in their tragedy, they started supporting the parents that joined that were new, that had just lost a child, that were at that stage. And so giving back in ways and having other people that went through the same thing is a huge way of healing and creating those more positive experiences for our own mind. So then when we're out there in the world, that's what's coming out of me, is a more positive, gentler, harmonious experience. That's what we have to do on this planet. And to create more harmony is to I think what's so important right now is creating as many harmonious relationships with others as we can, even those that have very different views than us. There is a human being there that you have something in common with, even though you think you don't. You don't. So that's the role of, and I give this example, I've given this before. So my next door neighbor that just got cancer lives with her father-in-law. She lives with her husband, her father-in-law. Her husband grew up in the house. Her father-in-law moved to that house next door to us when I was 14. He's like my surrogate dad, okay? And they live with their 2 children who are school-aged. I think they're like 11 and 14 or something. I'm really close with the family. The father, who is now in his 80s, has lost 2 wives to illness, okay? One to kidney disease and then cancer. And he's got 4 kids with these 2 wives. And I could, on some level, this is a heavy word, I could label the father a racist, okay? He's very, very conservative. For years, we had to endure his very political right-wing campaign signs on his front lawn, right? And so the daughter and the son are not that conservative. And some years ago, and the father's older now, but the daughter said, "Oh no, we've disappeared those signs. We're not doing that anymore. There's not going to be these." But so I could just stay there with the father, holding him in a box. He's a racist. Okay. Well, he's much more than a racist. Okay. If you want to quote Bryan Stevenson with the Equal Justice Initiative, who's represented all these people, all these poor people, most of them African American, who ended up on death row, most of them because they were poor and they couldn't get adequate counsel. Okay? So he's represented these people, gotten a lot of them off of death row, represented them. And one of his quotes is, "We are so much more than the worst thing we've ever done." Right? So it allows forgiveness, and it allows a bigger expansion of ourselves. Okay? So my next door neighbor, this man could label racist, he's so much more than that. He's the one that when he was driving, could drive, and I needed to go to the train 5 minutes away to get the bus to New York to teach at the center there. He's the one who gave me the ride when my dad couldn't do it anymore, and after my dad died. Who'd take my bag out of the back seat of the car and kiss me goodbye and tell me, "Let me know if you need anything." That's my neighbor. He'd do anything for me. He's always like, "Can I help you with something?" When I come back from a trip, he's always like, "How are you doing? What's happening?" I can rely on him. I trust him. He's wonderful. So many more things he does than... So that's everybody on the planet. We all make mistakes. We all have limited views until you're a Buddha. That's ordinary me. Can I encounter somebody else and look at them and try to get a bigger picture than this one comment that they just made about, that candidate I don't like? We're so much more than that. So find the common ground. And one common ground is, as long as you're human, you and the other person have Buddha nature. Oh, yes. Okay? Buddha nature means you're not a Buddha. It means you have a potential that can ripen into a fully realized being. So now you have something in common with them. Okay? And here's another thing you have in common with this other person, is just as I want to be happy and I don't want to suffer, they want the same thing, because everybody wants that. Is there anyone in here that doesn't want that? Right? Everybody wants to be happy and doesn't want to suffer. Okay, so now you have two things in common. Right? And isn't it interesting, if you want to go on, is as much as I want to be happy, sometimes I'm not happy, just like them. Right? And as much as I don't want to suffer, sometimes suffering shows its face, just like them. Right? So all of a sudden, there's a line, there's a connection, me and this other person. Well, they have this view and I have this view. You can focus on the differences. I'm part of some interfaith groups in the Philadelphia area. We focus on what we have in common, okay? But there are differences in all these different spiritualities and religions. So what we do is we have sessions, and they go, "Can you tell us about the Bible? You're Christian. Can you give us a presentation one night for an hour and a half and tell us what's the essence of the Bible and how do you practice?" So then I learn about their tradition. Then we have the Hindus come, and they tell us about their sacred text and why it's important and the significance in their lives. Then they had me present Buddhism. Then the Muslims came, "Can you tell us about their book? How they practice, how they use it in everyday life?" So suddenly all those differences end up, they're very similar, what everybody's doing. And then we celebrate each other's holidays. Oh, they're going to do this. Now they're going to have Ramadan. Now they're having Easter. Now they're having... That's what we have to do. That's our role. If you're in this room, that's your responsibility. I'm making it your responsibility. Please, find ways. You can always find a way to dialogue harmoniously with someone else. But here's the catch is, can you become friends with them? If you create a healthy relationship with them, okay, you can become friends. Okay, we're very willing to do stuff for our friends. Okay, and you're very willing to listen to your friend a little bit more, to hear their view that may be very different than mine, but their view sometimes teaches me things. Why they think like that, why they want to vote that way, why they're doing this with their families, why they don't recycle, why they bring bags to the grocery store instead of using the bags, or whatever their thing is, right? You educate yourself, you become broader, bigger, but from a harmonious heart. Make sense? Question?
After a school shooting, my son and I were sitting, we're coming in here. What can we do about not having that happen? I'm like, we're going into the Kadampa Center. You can ask Geshe-la. And he did, and Geshe-la thought for a minute, and he goes, well, you can commit never to do that. And you brought up Gaza, and you talk about how to get along with other people, but I'm having trouble with the fact that I'm in a society that collectively has given the weapons that are doing that. So I feel like I am doing that. What to do with that?
Yes, so we had asked Kirti Senchab Rinpoche, a Lama I was very close with, who passed away in 2006. And we haven't found his reincarnation yet, and most of the centers now don't even know who he was. He toured all of our centers for years, and one of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teachers, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama's teachers. And someone asked him, do I need to pay taxes if it's going to promote these wars that I don't believe in? And he said, actually, there's a ramification if you don't legally pay your taxes, that there is a negative karma for that. That's part of the law of this country, the karma that I had to be born in this country, which is an enormously free country, so we're really graced. You know, I never, at this point, after visiting Eastern Russia with that Lama and realizing how things went there, I will never again take for granted the freedom I have as an American woman. It's amazing. Yet, there's problems. It's not a perfect system at all, and the States has harmed a lot of beings and continues to do so. So he was saying you need to pay your taxes, and you have to understand that you are going to get some imprints of the negative karma that the country kills people, and the country provides weapons and things like that. So we purify. We do purification techniques. I do Vajrasattva every night to purify whatever of the day, because I'm an ordinary being, which means I make mistakes all day long, and mainly, in general, if I'm not making a blatant mistakes, if I don't have the direct perception of emptiness, I've got a tainted view that colors everything I do that creates some negative karma. So it's an inspiration to want to get the view, the right view, and progress along the path to become a Buddha when you're beyond all the karma, like that. So it's a complicated system in samsara. You know, it's not a perfect system. And you can choose, some people choose not to pay taxes, and they do it, like there's people that legally don't pay taxes and have extracted themselves from the systems. They don't get Social Security, they won't get Medicare. I know people that have done that. And then there's people that don't pay it illegally, you know, and that's their statement, and they kind of, you know, and so it's your choice. You have a choice to do what you like, but unfortunately, you know, maybe we should go to protests about anti-war protests, but go in a peaceful way with a good motivation. I do contact Congress people. I do feel there is a system, and they do count and add up how many people contact over different issues, and when they get a lot of numbers of a certain issue, that's when they vote a certain way. Seriously, they still do, and they do pay attention, because I used to work in Congress, and so there's different things you can do that people feel helpless, but there's organizations we can join that really help, and things you can do. We were packing bags at one point for to send to Ukraine and for Ukrainian refugees that we were doing in Philadelphia. So there's a lot of ways we can participate, but it's hard, you know, it can be hard. That, yes.
Real quick, we are out of time, but very quickly, can you speak to the intention as well? You know, like, I don't think that you have the intention to harm others.
Right.
So even though, as you mentioned...
That's right.
Yeah.
So you get a mixed karma. So, you know, I don't agree with the wars, and I don't want to send weapons. I'm totally anti-gun. Like, I'm a total pacifist in many ways. And so then I get to Amsterdam, right? And then we had some political conversations. And Holland isn't perfect, okay, even though they have really, really, really great cheese, okay? My God. But they're not perfect, and they elected a right-wing leader last autumn. He couldn't put a government together, but, you know, but anyway, they have their issues. A lot of it's around immigration now. A lot of our vote's going to be around immigration. It's going to color different things in the elections. And so so we were having these little, very relaxed conversations in a cafe or at the center, and then here comes some people, and they said to me, okay, so we're trying to understand. In the States, you have all these mass shootings. What do you think they said? So they said, why don't you just get rid of the guns? As if we had never thought about that before, right? And I'm not talking about your hunting rifle. That's different. I've lived in hunting cultures. I get it. I understand. In Vermont, some people are poor. They get their deer. I don't agree. I'm not going to kill animals, but they get their deer and they eat it all winter. That's different. It's not what we're talking about. But now everybody needs this weapon to defend themselves, they say. And when you have a weapon, and then we have a lot of drug problems in this country, and you put that weapon in the hand of an alcoholic who's drunk or on drugs, and a lot of people, I've worked with prisoners, and a lot of them who murdered people were under the influence of drugs and alcohol and said they don't even remember what happened. Why put a weapon? Why allow a weapon to get into their hands? If there's no weapon, okay, they can get a knife. It's very different stabbing somebody, and a lot of people don't die from stab wounds. So, something to think about. But again, you don't have to agree. So you've got mixed karma. I don't agree with the weapons and all that. You're just going to have a different outcome. You're not gleefully going, yeah, they killed all the Gazans. It's a very different outcome like that. So it's important to know that. And again, samsara is going to be this kind of messy system. That we're in countries that we don't support this or that or stuff like that. And again, Buddhists say this is a degenerative time, and that means it's getting harder to practice. There's more distractions. But they do say, I mentioned this Friday night, like a sewing needle. You have that little space you put the thread through. It's a little slim space, but there is a space there. So they say if you really want to go for it to your enlightenment, shoot yourself through the space. Get yourself through the space. There is a space there you can get through. It's going to take a lot of effort. You know how much it is to get that thread through? Sometimes you're trying, you know. Some of you are like, I never sewed before. I don't know. Try it, okay? But there is still a space to get through, but it's getting narrower and narrower and narrower, but you can do it. And you can make great strides in a degenerative time once you get through. It's available to you. But what happens is we give up. I can't get the thread through. I'm done. Don't throw it all away. You just try every day, little bit, whether it's 10 minutes sitting. Then you want to read a little bit, 10 pages of this book, 5 pages of this, and you decide to go to a class. You know, you try slowly, slowly. Don't give up. His Holiness says, don't give up. Is anyone here interested in the buddy system? Do you want a buddy to do your practice with? You can put your hand up. Okay. Only one person. Oh, 2 people. Okay. There's your buddy. If you guys want, exchange your phone numbers, meet, introduce yourself. If you'd like to do it, see how it goes. And you figure out how you want to contact each other. Do you want to email? Do you want to text? Do you want to WhatsApp? Do you want, and you set it up with what's comfortable and you send a reminder. And then what do you want to do? Do you want to study? Do you want to do a course? Do you want to read a book together? Do you want to just say 10 minutes meditation in the morning? Let's remind each other. Let's make a deal that 4 times next week we're going to do it. And remind me. Let's set a time that we remind each other. Make it your own thing that you want to do. Okay? Great. Okay. Thank you. Let's dedicate the merit. I want to thank you so much for joining. I'm sorry this is so short. You're welcome to join our afternoon that starts at 1:30 of the Death and Dying course. We're talking about a lot of practical caregiving techniques and what it is ushering somebody out and how to get your paperwork together. We're going to talk about some of that and some other things, as well as 5 powers at the time of death, very powerful way to incorporate your whole life's practice. So may we dedicate whatever positive energy we've created from our time together to helping you understand that the external reality is coming from your mind. Please, can you make it gentler, more harmonious in taking care of your own self-compassion techniques to make your response gentler, more harmonious, and to really help our path to enlightenment so we can be there for all living beings. Jang Chu Sin children Boshe, Ma Ke Panam Ke Gyurche, Ke Panam Pa Me Pa Yang, Gane gandu belwarjo. Thank you so much. And I hope to see all of you again. Thank you so much for your great questions and comments. Oh,
Group photo? Okay.
you see what you're missing on Zoom?
Somebody who's going to arrange everyone. It's not me. David? Bye, everyone online. Thanks for joining.